This is exactly the kind of reason that I don't like working on new pieces of equipment. But I'm fixing this for my neighbor, because she knows that I do this on the side and as a hobby. This otherwise brand new snowblower, Legend Force, which I had no idea who the hell Legend Force was. I guess this is kind of an economy model. So the good news about that is that what I uncovered is that it has a Briggs Stratton engine, overhead valve. It looks like very similar to a Predator, or a Honda. So anyway, that's great that it's not some random brand X garbage. I mean, I know Briggs and Stratton stuff is made in China now, but whatever, at least it's name brand. So she said she had no spark. So obviously the first thing that I did was verify that, check the spark plug gap. I disconnected there's a plastic key ignition, I think, on this. She didn't have the key with it when she brought me the machine, so I just disconnected that. You can see that you got the two wires coming off of the existing ignition right here. Usually, if you separate them, you should have spark. Then when you ground one out to another part of the machine, that kills the spark. Different models, different scenarios, different situation. Neither worked in this situation before I opened everything up. Anyway, so I figured, whatever, $25, I'll order an ignition coil replacement and put it in. Back to why I don't like the newer stuff. Look at all of this plastic. Okay. So this is just, I don't need to completely remove this. I think for service reasons, they actually have it kind of corrugated so that it kind of folds out of the way, so you don't have to completely unbolt it all the way around the engine. But before I even got to that point, I had to take off this entire assembly, which is, I think, at least two pieces of plastic attached to each other. One covers the drivetrain side that spins the auger to throw the snow. This is ss22r for anybody who's curious about that. Take that whole thing off just to get to the actual engine. Also had to remove the chute, which is three parts: the handle, the slide that the chute sits on to spin around. Had to take that off. Had to remove the carb cover and the primer bulb shroud. Here we go. This is the 208cc. So so I guess this would be similar to like a 5 horsepower Honda engine, probably, or a 5 horsepower Predator engine. I was saying 9.5. Yeah, 208cc. So, in case you were curious, so I had to remove that. I had to remove the shroud that covers the other side of that also bolts the carb to the engine. And then I had to remove the flywheel cover after I had to remove the recoil assembly, all so that I could finally just get down to what I'm hoping is a bad ignition coil. So I know a lot of people who do what I do. I don't like that this is a plastic flywheel, but this is set up. I think this is set up for an electric start. Back here, put a starter somewhere in here. Anyway, so one of the other things that I kind of wanted to do this video for is there's always a lot of talk about within the small engine enthusiast community about rust on the flywheel not causing no spark condition. Okay, so I've done this a million times. I'm going to do it again today, and we'll see what happens. This is, it's not the most rust I've ever seen. It's quite a bit of rust, knowing that it's all around the flywheel. And I'm going to check out, I'm going to take a closer look at everything in a second, see if there's anything broken, if there's anything missing, there's any kind of corrosion, and then I'll unbolt. First I'm going to check the specs for the air gap, and then I'm going to unbolt the coil itself. I probably will just replace it since I've got the new one here already, and sand all this off and see what happens. I am kind of curious to see if just sanding it alone with the original coil will help us regain spark, and if so, then that should put that myth, that belief to rest. Anyway, I'm going to get back to it. Just want to do get a little bit of air out some grievances. Just all the plastic, all this BS you have to remove just to get down to replace one piece. Just aggravating. So anyway, I'm gonna get back to it and follow up and see, hopefully, if this thing runs. Now, I don't think that you need to know much to know that fresh gasoline is not supposed to look like urine. That's what was in the machine when she brought it down to me, probably left over from last year or the year before that, both of which were very, very, very mild winters here in Fair Lawn, so this could be 2 years old. Yeah, since we hardly got enough to even need a machine for last year. Anyway, so I drained that out while I had the shroud off of the flywheel, and what I noticed when I took a closer look at the existing ignition coil, what I noticed as I started to unbolt it, just assuming that it was bad, because like I said, for $25 or whatever, sometimes trial and error, it could be worth rolling the dice. Anyway, the lower bolt, you can't see it now because I'm buttoning everything back up. I just tested it, and it has spark now. And the reason is, the lower bolt of the two bolts on the top and the bottom of the coil, the lower bolt had backed itself out a couple turns, and it was loose enough for the magnet on the flywheel to have sucked it in, so there was no air gap on half of the ignition coil between the coil and the flywheel. So no air gap, no spark. Yeah. I thought it was a little weird, but I figured, you know what? I really didn't want to have to unbolt the carb to get the spark plug boot out from behind the intake assembly. It wraps up, the coil's down in here, and then the plug wire goes behind this intake plate, intake manifold, whatever you want to call it, whatever it's called. It goes back up behind here, and there's no clearance even with the shroud off to get the coil out. It goes around the back to get the coil out, at least that I was able to see. Oh, actually, maybe there was. Oh, no. I don't think there was. I don't think there were. Anyway, I didn't think there was. So I was like, I'm pretty sure it might have been the lower bolt. I don't feel like taking the carburetor off, because that's annoying. You gotta undo these nuts and then slide the whole thing off, and then sometimes the gas gets ruined, and then you have vacuum leaks. I just didn't feel like messing with it, thinking, testing my theory. I just reset the air gap. When I had the shroud off, reset the air gap between the coil and the flywheel, put the spark plug boot back on, put a little starting fluid in the carb, choked it, and it started right up. So I got all the old gas out. Pretty sure I found what the actual problem was, almost just by going through the process here. And I just put some fresh gas in, and now I'm going to see if I button it all back up, if it runs the way that it's supposed to. Well, I think I spoke too soon. It looks like I guess whatever fuel it was burning when it started up was probably whatever was left in the bowl. Yeah, because pretty sure the float and the needle are stuck, because after I reconnected the fuel line, no fuel is entering the carb at all. So I have pulled it off the machine, and now I'm gonna crack it open, and I'm probably gonna find a whole bunch of really ugly varnish and gunk, chunky gunk, that I'm gonna have to clean out from the bowl, from the needle, and put it all back together, put it on the machine. This is why I tell everybody, these machines, these carburetors on a lot of these newer machines, regardless of the engine, whether it's a Honda, Briggs Stratton, Tecumseh, this is to drain the fuel out. This bolt right here that my pinky finger is touching, this bolt right here is always accessible from underneath the machine. All you need is a wrench. You could probably even do it with an adjustable wrench. At the end of the winter, when the spring is here and you know we're not getting any more snow, let this run dry, run all the gas out of it if you want. That's one way to do it. Or just get a bucket like I have here for free, or a bowl or whatever, something to catch the fuel, loosen this, remove this, and just let it drain out. Just do it. And then it's going to save you hours of frustration when you actually need the machine, or spending hundreds of dollars in repairs for all of what I've done here. The ignition coil absolutely had backed itself out, but now because it just sat, I guess maybe they let it sit after the ignition coil backed itself out and the engine stopped. They probably let it sit, and now all the fuel that has been sitting in this bowl has created essentially a useless carburetor. I'm almost positive I'll be able to clean it, which is what I'm going to do, and I'll be back in a minute to show you what it looks like on the inside. But please, for the love of God, if somebody like me tells you to drain the fuel out of your power equipment before you store it, please just do that. All right. This is my camera not focusing. Hold on a second. See all that sludge? That's just the nut. That's just the bolt that holds on the bowl to the carburetor. This is going to be like an unboxing video right now. I'm about to pop this bowl off, and I don't know, some of you guys might be surprised on what you see inside. Some of you might not have any idea what you're looking at. Either way, I'm telling you that I could predict it before I even remove it. It's going to be a mess. It's going to look like pond scum. Let's see if I'm right. The anticipation. Oh, yeah. Honestly, not as bad as I thought it would be. I really thought it was going to be worse, but that's enough. Yep. All that varnish, that's from the old fuel. So, it's also... yeah. See that? That's blocking up everything. Everything that needs gas to be able to get through it. Yeah. So I got to take all this apart, all the way down inside. Got to take all that apart. Tiny little holes that have to be cleaned on there. Barely fit one bristle of a wire brush. This is like glue. This is enough of just the viscosity alone to seal up those holes and prevent the flow of air and fuel through this carburetor. So I'll be back in about, I don't know, 40 minutes. I'll be back in about 40 minutes after I clean this up and put it back together to hopefully show you a running machine. Here we go. Time to get cleaned up. All right, so this is a better view of what I was just talking about. See all that? That's supposed to be spotless. That's supposed to be completely clean. That's the needle. This is the part of the needle that was down inside of the rest of the body of the carburetor, and it had so much varnish on it, it didn't even want to pull itself out. Literally had to pry it out with the screwdriver. And as you can see, it's also supposed to be loose. It just sits in here. It's supposed to just sit in there. You know, right now, if this was all clean, this would actually just fall out right out of the plastic bowl. But it's glued itself. Look at that. It's glued itself in place. Glued itself with the varnish from the gas left in the carburetor. So that's that. And then this also had adhered itself to the body of the carburetor. There you go. That's a perfect view right there. All of that crap, this is supposed to be completely clean brass. All of that crap had kept this so stuck inside the body of the carburetor, I had to spray some brake cleaner down in there and jab it around with a tiny tweaker screwdriver, spray some brake cleaner, and then I had to poke around because it was deep down inside the body of the car, poke around with a screwdriver to loosen it up and get the brake cleaner around it, and then it was able to slide itself out. So now all these holes, see how they're completely blocked, like I said? Yeah, a machine with a carburetor like this will never run, ever. Every single one of these tiny holes, every single one of them, like I said, about the diameter of one bristle of a wire brush, all need to be cleaned. This has to be completely cleaned, which I'm gonna do. And you know, it's amazing that this is actually, that wasn't gunked up. Well, yeah, on the outside. So all this crap has to get cleaned up and put back together, but I just wanted to take a minute to show you, like literal glue. I mean, look at this. This looks like it's wet. This looks like it's wet, but that's hardened on there with that glaze. Just like literal, like glue. Well, it's loose now because I was tapping on it with a screwdriver to get everything apart. But yep. Anybody need to glue the headstock back on their guitar? Just grab some varnish out of the carburetor from the machine you forgot about. Whatever. Alright, everything's reassembled and about as clean as it's gonna get. Time to bolt it back on and see what happens. Legend force turned out to be more of a pain in my ass force, because even after cleaning the carburetor as much as I did and getting it bolted back up, it runs but it surges. That could be because it needs super. It could be because the linkage needs to be adjusted for the carb, for the governor. Or it could just be that the air to fuel ratio inside the carb, despite me cleaning it as best I could with what I have here, didn't really solve the problem. Unlike some of the old school carburetors, the carburetor that's on this machine has it's all fixed. There's no adjustment screws for you to be able to adjust the fuel to air ratio. I know there's some workarounds for that. I could drill it out and I could make it adjustable, or whatever, but for all intents and purposes I'm going to keep it stock. So what I'm probably going to do, like I said, it runs, it's got spark. The ignition coil problem that's resolved. It was actually a loose bolt at the bottom of the ignition coil. The lower bolt, it had vibrated itself out, became loose enough for the bottom of the ignition coil to lay up against the flywheel. So I was able to reset the air gap, tighten the bolts, and right now, if I needed it in a pinch to clean the driveway, it'll start, and it'll run, it'll just surge. It's also leaking a little bit of fuel out of the bottom of the bowl, which I think is because the seal between the bowl, the float bowl, and the body of the carb, for whatever reason, it's a little larger in diameter now than it should be, so it doesn't really seat properly. And additionally, the spring on the needle that helps keep it separate as it hangs inside of the plastic float looks like it was slightly damaged from being bonded with the varnish and the gunk inside the carburetor to the actual plastic bowl. It's a slight bend at the top of it. I think that it's probably a fraction of it's such a slight amount, but I think it's creating a problem where it's not getting the proper fuel flow through the needle, through the port, past the needle rather. So obviously, what I'm going to do is I'm going to order an aftermarket carburetor for this thing. I already spoke to my neighbor and she's cool with it. So I'll get the carb, I'll slap it on here and put all this plastic back together, and should be ready for snow if we get any more between now and the end of the winter season, and if not, it'll be ready for next year.